You already know what Bitcoin is. You already know why you want to do it, but set the SMART goals so you understand the time preference that you need to be able to hang on to this for, or the quantity you're trying to produce, or the financial freedom you're trying to create.
Welcome back to the Compass Mining Podcast. My name is Jarrett, and today I'm joined by none other, the one and only Brad James. Brad, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you, Jarrett?
Do you like that intro? I didn't really. I was going to keep going like the old school wrestlers where they have or when Game of Thrones where they say the Lord of the Seventh Realm or whatever.
I was thinking A Knight's Tale, right?
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
That's a nice call out there for those who know. Yes, that's
Wow.
it. So much of the knighthood there was all about the hype. So anyway, let's talk about hype today. We're gonna do an episode where we're gonna talk about the 5 mistakes that newbie Bitcoin miners make when they get into the industry. As much of what you do with mining with Brad, much of what you do is help people go from 0 to 1 and then expand from there. But I think what we're really going to focus on today is the 0 to 1. What are the mistakes that are made? So I'm going to pass it over to you. Let's just dive right in.
Sure. I think a little context just so everybody's aware.
Sure. Yep.
Way back when I got started, you bought miner plug-in, made Bitcoin, right? And I think so much of that ethos is still in the industry and people entering Bitcoin, but it doesn't work that way anymore because miners just don't produce the way they used to. And the challenges are more because there's more competition, hash rates growing significantly, all the above. So all of the stuff that I've read on the internet and dove into with this, a lot of it is older from 2017, 2018, 2019. And I think more and more people need to be having discussions with people who've been in that era of mining, but the information has definitely been updated. And most of the issues that we see today, or at least I see with our colo clients or anybody who's mining with us, or even our site owner operators, almost has nothing to do with mining, right? And most people would say that that's seems like an oxymoronic statement, but I think you can find most of the technical stuff available, and that's just continues to upgrade just like any other industry. And really, when we boil down to it, Jarrett, often I think people are forgetting the basics of what this endeavor actually is, which is a business. I don't know about you, but to me, those things tend to fall by the wayside because of the sexiness or the novelty of doing Bitcoin mining. Do you see that often?
Yeah, and I just see that in general in any type of entrepreneurship. And I think when people get into entrepreneurship, they're really focused on enhancing the product or the service because that's kind of what goes out to the world. And as someone who's in media, that's the thing that's sexy to share on media, if that makes sense. That's the thing you want to have. If you're selling a really cool water bottle, for example, that is the only thing that you're going to see on Instagram. You're not going to see, do they have a good accountant? Do they have a good lawyer? Do they have all the other things kind of in a row? Are they, do they have the best payment system set up? All of those things that are behind the scenes. So it makes total sense that when people would come in, they maybe, like you said, you can go get the technicals. There are people like you out there. There are people like Shannon, who's our chief mining officer, who have been around it for a long time, who are going to tell you the exact filtration you are going to need for, the humidity level or the non-humidity level or whatever it is. But beyond all of that, and I think what we're going to focus on today are the things that maybe people don't see. And I think all of these points are really going to be salient for anyone listening because now is the time when we're in this bull market, and I'm using air quotes because it feels kind of like we're in a bull market standstill, like we're waiting on the tarmac to take off. But now is the time to really start to solidify these things because this is the only way, and you've shared with me the 5 points we're going to go over today. Having these ironclad is the only way that whether you've got 10 miners and you open an LLC or you've got 10 megawatts online, it's the only way I think you're probably going to be able to navigate the next bear market. Would you say that's probably, accurate?
Yeah, and I think to that point, Jarrett, we're looking at it from a standpoint of not just being ready for it, but being able to pivot when you need to. Without the foundation, it's not going to help anybody, right? So if you're diving into mining and you're shooting from the hip, no business plan, no nothing, none of those basics in place, when something goes wrong, you're going to deal with an issue. I mean, that's the mantra we have with all of our clients is when things go wrong, not if, especially because this is such a young industry and everybody's still learning and figuring it out. And not only that, but you also need to be ready for any like regulatory changes, any other issues that might pop up that are around supply chain, finance, taxes, customer acquisition, like all of the variables that you're already juggling. If you don't have a foundation, it's really hard to figure out what you're doing because then you're dealing with quicksand, right? And you need to make sure that that cement dries before you actually start getting ready to deal with all of those things. Otherwise, you're going to end up with a footprint in your foundation and it's going to crack later. So with that being said, the biggest thing that I always tell people who are entering mining is, hey, set some SMART goals. You already know what Bitcoin is. You already know why you want to do it, but set the SMART goals so you understand the time preference that you need to be able to hang on to this for, or the quantity you're trying to produce, or the financial freedom you're trying to create. You need to build some SMART goals, right? Simple, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time sensitive. If you're not doing those things, all of this stuff is just best guess. And when you're doing best guesses, that works if it's a hobby, but you're not actually giving yourself the benefit of the doubt to actually make this thing work to get you to financial freedom, right? And the reason you need to have this is because one of my mentors actually talks about this a lot. He's like, people DCA into Bitcoin all the time, but mining is really the best way to DCA into Bitcoin 365 days a year, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And if you're not looking at it from that standpoint as a business, you're really missing out on all of this, which leads into the next point that you actually need to start figuring out plans and making planning part of your regular process when dealing with this. Early on, with a lot of our colo clients, I say, hey, every quarter we need to look at this. We need to look at the metrics. We need to understand how we're doing. And that's based on your SMART goals. And they're going to go, great. Why are we not getting closer? I go, well, what's the plan around this? And they go, a plan? I go, yeah, it's a business. It's not just a passive investment. There's no such thing as mailbox money. This is the closest thing you have to it. But if you're not looking at it from the lens of running a business, which means, are you legally structured and set up somewhere? Are you actively tracking the monetary value? Are you actively tracking what this is costing you to deploy and execute on? All of those things, right, that you're looking at, from systems to the tools that go into it, to the people you're working with, and understanding how, hey, I am actually taking my fiat money, turning it into electricity. That electricity now is turning into Bitcoin through the aspect of proof of work and mining. And then on the back end of it, what am I doing with that Bitcoin on the back end? Because that's a taxable event right now. When you spend it, it's a taxable event. When you're hanging on to it, there are going to be taxes involved in this if you're going to hang on to it long term. We just don't know exactly what that looks like. And most people don't understand the planning around that to deal with every little transition that there is. And enjoy the benefits of having that set up like a business. Point number one, having SMART goals in place is really important to then informing what the planning process is around this, which is point number two. And if you don't have those two things, the third thing you're going to end up doing is FOMOing in, making irrational decisions. You're going to be deploying cash, putting things here, making split decisions without having any metrics or level of success to compare it to. There's a reason why the most successful people in the world are just consistent. They follow their plans. They pivot when they need to. They understand the metrics around pivoting. They understand the costs associated with it. And they can deal with all of those little hiccups along the way, right? I don't care if you're a farmer. I don't care if you're manufacturing widgets. I don't care if you're in financial planning. I don't care if you're a CEO of a tech company or a software company. All of these people are dealing with metrics and they're running planning modules regularly. It's not just a single plan. You know, in the Build a Mind Virtual Bootcamp, we talk about planning versus plans. The plan is great, but really, we've all heard the saying, best laid plans. That's why you just have to make it part of the regular process when you're running these specific anecdotes or looking at the different scenarios. So step one, you know, put some SMART goals in place. Step two, get used to doing the planning. And the planning is around how you're going to actually run your business. Again, transition of fiat all the way into managing the Bitcoin that's being produced. All of those things require planning, systems, people, process. All of those things need to be in place. And most people do it, and then they FOMO into it, right? Because they don't have this plan. So the third thing is don't
that sounds
FOMO.
like a t-shirt waiting to be made. Before we, yeah, no FOMO. Before we get into no FOMO.
No FOMO.
What is, I'm trying to think. So you have your SMART goals and you have your plans. What is something that, what's a mistake people make when they're doing their SMART goals for Bitcoin mining? Is there something that maybe they think is like, oh, this will be a good, a good timetable, or to, keep it time sensitive, when really it's not, because of the nature of Bitcoin? Compass Mining makes Bitcoin mining accessible to everyone. Whether you're investing in one machine or thousands, our customizable solutions are tailored to meet your needs. We are your experts in Bitcoin mining, offering a platform where individuals and businesses can purchase hardware, host machines, and access a range of ancillary services. Start mining in as little as 48 hours with our turnkey hardware online and mining directly to your Bitcoin wallet within 2 business days. Discover more at compassmining.io and see how we can power your success.
I think for most people, when they're looking at planning and SMART goals in general, they're talking about the activity, right? SMART goals are really based on the outcome. And the planning aspect is what informs the how to get to the outcome, right? Your SMART goals should be informed by the why you're doing this, which I'm assuming if you're getting into mining, you already know the why, because you've already studied Bitcoin, you understand all those details. But when people start talking SMART goals, they say, I'm going to do X. And you're like, wait, okay, but that doesn't help me understand what is the result you're trying to get to. So we're recording this. It's the day after the big game. I'm going to make sure it's called that. It's like, what are the steps? The goal for us is to win the big game. Well, now the planning is the game plan around it. What are we doing on offense in the first series? What are we doing on defense in the first series? How are we handling it? This is all the planning that goes into place. It's the same thing with mining, right? People don't understand, hey, I want to acquire 3 Bitcoin because it's me, my significant other, and our kid. And some of the information has suggested that if we acquire 3 Bitcoin, we will be okay in the long run, right? Like that's a goal, that SMART goal that a lot of people think about, but they're missing, hey, time sensitivity, right? That's the one that's missing. I'm going to acquire 3 Bitcoin by X date. I don't care. Mining now is the vehicle, right? You could also DCA into it. In fact, often part of the planning process that we help people iterate on is, look, if you have some extra funds along the way, go DCA into it at the same time, right? That way you can put it into the same business in the ledger so that you're making sure that it's all under the business expenses, so that you as an individual are not being taxed individually. Your business is enjoying the income that's being produced, and at the same point in time, you're enjoying the benefits of running an operation, of buying capital equipment, of real assets, deploying it, running it every month, paying somebody to do it. Those are all things that you can take advantage of, at least here in the US and in most countries, right? Depending on your tax code. But you have to look at all of these things, and then people go, great, 3 Bitcoin. One of the vehicles is mining. One of the vehicles is DCAE. Some of it might be spot buying at the end of the year with bonus, whatever it is. But the goal is 3 Bitcoin, let's just say in 5 years. Okay, so now we're looking at your planning. Will your planning actually get you there? Right? Because often people are like, oh, I'm just going to buy the equipment and go, without actually digging into, will my plans actually help me get to 3 Bitcoin in 5 years? Work backwards from there based on where the math is now. The cool thing now is we at least have 10 years of statistics to be able to back into this, right? And some of the tools that are available from an economic standpoint, right? You talk about all the tools out there. Luxor's got tools, Brain's got tools, Nico Smeed's doing a bunch of stuff from a mining economic standpoint. All of this information now is beginning to be rounded out and professional and accessible. People just don't know how to use it yet, which is why then they begin to make fear-based decisions. And now part of that leads into number 4, right? The reason they're making those fear-based decisions is because they don't have the right network of people around them. They don't have the right peers that they can bounce this stuff off to because they are unwilling to invest in that part of the journey. I hate to say it, right? I'm very much a merit-based person. And the thing I've learned in business, doesn't matter how much you know, doesn't matter how good you are, it really depends on who you know and how accessible those people are to you as an individual. And often, people don't have the right process in place to help them figure out, one, who are those people? Two, are they the right fit? Three, are they actually helping me get to where I need to go? Again, all of these 4 points, no SMART goals, no plan, they FOMO in because they don't have the right people helping them. All of these things are just business principles that I think most people understand or think they know, but then they don't actually go and execute.
Can I ask a question about the networking? Because that seems highly important. And maybe for you now, this makes sense. Where should you go to find people? Obviously, I think if you go to X and you search around for Bitcoin mining, and people who are in it within 30 minutes, you should have an answer. But where else IRL do you look? Like, how did you and Shannon meet? Shannon's our chief mining officer. You guys have both been in the industry for about the exact same amount of time. How are people meeting in 2017 versus how you think people are now meeting today? And I can't even believe it's 2025.
And that makes me feel old. I think the first thing is you need to understand who are the right types of people for you to work with, right? So before you even start to try and figure out who those people are or where they spend their time or how to get in touch with them, you really have to think about, hey, I know these types of people are the people I work best with. Most people don't look internally first when trying to find people. They go and try and find skill set or value or something else rather than trying to understand. I know that, for example, you and I, when we talk, we work really well together because we understand how to communicate with each other really well. We can find common ground on a lot of things. We disagree on a lot of stuff, but we're okay having those discussions, right? And we can challenge each other. Some people don't look good enough internally to go, hey, I can't deal with somebody who's going to challenge me. I can't deal with that type of activity in terms of communication. It's got to be over email, and it's just professional, right? So I would say build out what is your process, one, to identify who are the best people that you work with in your day-to-day life and what are the characteristics of those people. Then looking at that, now you're going in and looking at the skill sets. And then we actively, like for me, I prefer face-to-face. I prefer conversation. I prefer not social media networking. I try to avoid some of that stuff just because there's a lot of people out there that when they're a keyboard warrior, that's not actually who they may be in real life. And so for me, our process is great. That may be a way to get things going, but then it's multiple conversations. It's meeting in person, right? Shannon and I met through working together on an event way back when. And I think we had crossed paths prior to that, probably in the digital realm of things. But it wasn't until we had that face-to-face interaction where we were troubleshooting something together and trying to solve a big problem together that we're like, all right, we can work with this person forever, right? And it's one of those things that I think people they just are told go network and they don't have a plan, right? Another tool that I tell people is I go, once you figure out who you're really good at working with, we use a system called the Dream 100. There's actually a book on it, and I didn't learn this, this is from all the communities that I've been a part of. Go and build your list of your Dream 100 people that you think are going to help you get from 0 to 1, for example. Build that list and then find a creative way to get seen by those people or in front of those people. And that will be the best way for you to garner their time, right? Time and energy. Because at that point, those are the two biggest things that we have. Time and energy. Can always get more energy probably, but time is definitely a finite thing. And so many people don't understand that this is still a very small industry, and the people who have been growing consistently and showing up regularly, they're very busy. So when you're networking, I definitely tell people go to these in-person events Because if you put the investment into going, it shows some level of commitment, right? We use boot camps, like our virtual Build a Mind boot camp that we started back in 2021, to use it as a vetting tool to determine who we want to work with in terms of building facilities and helping them manage and grow those facilities. The homework and everything that goes in, the people who show up every day, the people who do the work that week, the people who ask questions, the people who are engaged, those are all big telling signs for me. And then we try to find time in person to meet with them, like we were just at NEMS last week, or 2 weeks ago. Geez, 2 weeks ago already. Trying to get this stuff where now you're actually finding ways to meet with them in person, shake their hand, understand energy, all that other good stuff. Here's the deal. We've talked about SMART goals. We've talked about plans. We've talked about don't let your emotions and fear determine what your choices and decisions are. We've talked about making sure you have the right network, and that right network is, hey, co-location, repairs, finance, cash management, business stuff, legal, whatever that is, get those in place. Number 5 then is, because they don't have those things in place, they now get super frustrated. And then it like doubles down on the FOMO. I have seen so many friends enter mining and exit mining because of mental health and frustration. I cannot stress this enough. You're not doing this to just acquire Bitcoin. You're doing this for some other reason outside of Bitcoin, and Bitcoin is a tool to help you get there. And so often, when people get to this level, they need to figure out ways to take a step back, take a deep breath, be very, assess the situation and observe it from not being emotionally tied to it, and then make decisions to move forward. But so often what this leads to is people will get down this rabbit hole and then they'll put good cash after bad cash. I've seen it 100 times. They go and they buy the newest equipment, right, at the peak. That's supposed to be there in 30 days. It shows up 6 months later. They are now playing from behind because they just shelled out 15 grand on a unit that no longer is producing based on what their math told them or their planning may have told them. And now they get frustrated. They go, I have to double down. At that point, I usually tell people, hey, take a step back. Let's reevaluate. Take in the new information. And let's actually look at this the right way so that you're not putting good cash after bad cash. Because when you do that, it only doubles down on the pain. Yes, sometimes we hear the story of the overnight successes where that works. But more often than not, statistically speaking, and if we understand that Satoshi built this magnificent tool to help prime a new financial system that is based on math, process, and statistics, don't go against the grain and against the ethos. Be patient. We just talked about DCAing in, taking your time. At the end of the day, this whole industry, the winners on the back end are going to be the people who have been here early, often, and consistently with a different mindset than the people who FOMO in and are going up and down and up and down and up and down, right? Anytime you FOMO in, and this is why I think there's the whole altcoin issue and if all of this other stuff, because that's basically what you're saying is I'm buying a lottery ticket. And not even necessarily a good one, right? Because what ends up happening, because people aren't planning, they hang on to that lottery ticket too long and then it's worthless. Because they're not thinking through this stuff in terms of a business mindset. They're thinking through this in terms of, I am trying to get lucky. I'm sure, Jarrett, I'm sure you've met a couple of those people. I've met easily hundreds of people like that. And unfortunately, because most people are not trained or taught this stuff growing up in terms of financial management or cash management or even business management or any of that, they end up making these irrational decisions because they feel like they're stuck between a rock and a hard place. And hey, if this little bet gets me ahead, why not do it? But these are the things that I see people that happen over and over and over again. By the way, again, big game just happened. I think pretty sure this week is one of the biggest weeks for all of those gambler mental health lines and the gambler addiction lines because a bunch of people lost out. And so now you're dealing with the mental health aspect. And I implore you all to understand that you're not in this just for number go up. You're in this for some other reason outside of that. Sometimes it just takes patience. So those are my 5 things.
Yeah, let's dive into the bonus ones. I do want to call that out. I think it's very interesting. Human nature. People won't invest in Bitcoin mining equipment, or they won't even buy Bitcoin. And I'm in a chat last night with everyone watching the big game, the Super Bowl that just happened, and people were putting in $100 because they could win $2,000 if the Chiefs came back against the Eagles, like in 2017 the Pats did against the Falcons. And everyone just thinks they're going to be Charlie in the Chocolate Factory, right? Everyone thinks they have the golden ticket. So we're in an interesting time when it comes to making decisions. But let's go to some of your bonus points. And then I also just, before we get to your bonus points, just review. So you have SMART goals, setting those, very important. Then you have plans. Then you have don't FOMO. Then you have make sure you're surrounding yourself with people that you want to learn from that can take you to a place where you're trying to go. And then number 5, don't have your money chase bad decisions. With that, what are some bonus tips that you have that this is a lot of alpha? Because I know normally people have to get on a call with you and your time is very, very limited these days.
Yes. Yeah. I think so. I want to start this with an example. Okay. Just so everybody sees it. Because they don't have a SMART goal, they don't do any planning to get there. They buy whatever equipment is on the market, and then they scramble to find hosting, and stuff gets stuck in customs or somewhere in transit because it doesn't know where to go. And when it arrives, potentially it's been sitting in a warehouse and been kicked around, so it shows up broken, and they don't have anybody to repair it because they didn't think about it. And they don't have the right hosting partner to help guide them, right? Like it becomes
it's a quicksand situation.
A spiral and a spiral and a spiral and a spiral, okay? Yeah. And that's where my hope with everything we do with all of our colo clients, the Microminery Club, all of this, we've learned the technical is always going to adjust and change, right? And this is where the bonus comes in. When you have these things in place, because even when people have them in place, they stop doing them. So this is bonus point number 6. Every year, you need to go back and do this stuff every single year. You're running a business. We do a lot of quarterly goals, okay? Quarterly goals, not annual planning. Quarterly goals. There's a long-term plan because if you're running a business is an investment for you. Your goal is to either exit, have that cash flow, do whatever it is, whatever the outcome of that business is, or if it's a nonprofit, it's some sort of other outcome where you're investing into that nonprofit in order to make this work. Point number 6 is just because you do this stuff once, you need to go back and refresh it every single year. Because every year, because it's technically changing, the technology is changing, there's new entrants every year, there's new information, and especially right now where it's evolving so fast. This is and I don't have the stats off the top of my head. This is like one of the fastest growing, fastest evolution-based industries that has ever hit the earth. And that's for a variety of reasons, right? I do not believe that we have reached the pinnacle of proof of work at all. And I say proof of work because Bitcoin mining is clearly the tip of the spear for all of the other stuff that's coming behind it, right? In terms of computing power. So when we look at this, there's models being pulled out of this across the board for other types of computing power, for AI, for all of this stuff, where if you look down the road and you can take a step back and look long term, if you're in this now and you're doing it right now and not having a bunch of losses and more W's than L's, you're going to be okay. Because patience, and this is point number 7, patience and consistency and doing this every single year for an extended amount of time is how you get there and how you actually get to your goals. So when people enter mining, I go, look, this is not a short-term thing. This isn't a one and done. This is a practice, just like anything else. So that would be point number 7.
Patience is
don't have enough
worth its weight
patience.
in gold, as they used to say. Maybe now it's worth its weight in Bitcoin, probably in S21 miners. Brad, I want to make sure you get back to your day because I will actually be talking with you tomorrow night. Actually, when people hear this, that night, every Tuesday night, we have Talk Mining Tuesdays on X at 8 p.m. Eastern.
Yeah.
So I want to thank you for coming on. And I just think that all these points are really good. And I love that all 6 of the points have nothing technically specific to do with Bitcoin mining. They're all around business mindset and business structure
Right.
and organization. And I think the last 2 you said are so important to anything, consistency and patience, because I feel the same way about Bitcoin mining. If you're going to get into it, it's the same way I feel about Bitcoin. If I'm going to buy Bitcoin, it's because I'm holding it for 10 years. And then once you do that, everything makes sense and everything starts to fall into place. So I feel the same way, you probably, and I guess that was my last question. What is the time frame you give people when you say, hey, if you start with mining?
Again, it goes back to the SMART goals, right? There are a number of people, and there's a bunch of different strategies that we could dive into. That would be a whole other show as to like the business models and the planning around it. I think everybody needs to understand that mining is in the long run, right? We talked about it DCAing into Bitcoin 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. It is the long game. And if you play the long game, your cost of Bitcoin will be cheaper in the long run, not necessarily in the short run. Because when people run these, whatever you want to call it, these algorithms, their math, they're going, hey, why don't I just buy? I go, because you're missing out on all the benefits of doing this the long way. You could go drop a bunch of money right now and go spot buy Bitcoin or do whatever, and that's great. I have no problem with that. And if that achieves your goal, do it, because now you're eliminating the frustration of running a business, right? I think what people forget is mining is a business, hence, the shirt, mind your business. The point is, when you're doing this, you're playing the consistency game rather than dropping a ton of money at the beginning to just spot buy and accomplish the goal in one hit. So for me, when I try to talk to people about this who are considering this, I go, understand you're also going to go through one of the best personal development challenges you've ever been through, which is running a business, because you learn all of the flaws you have as a human being. And now you're also doing it in mining and Bitcoin. And my hope always for all of those people is to help them eliminate the pain by saying, hey, I learned the hard way. Don't do it the hard way. If you want to do it the hard way, go for it. But then, you're just a masochist. I think if you want to do mining, you're playing the long game and you're doing the incremental growth. And what I would say is that there's honor in being a miner because you're securing the network. And by securing the network, you are also becoming a champion for Bitcoin, and you understand it better than most people who are just spot buying it, which means you will be a leader in the industry long-term if you stick with it.
I think that's one of the reasons why philosophically a lot of the miners are where they are today, because they want to see this thing grow, and mining is the surefire way to make sure that your hand is lifting, making sure all tides, the rising tide lifts all boats. Brad, I want to thank you for hopping on. Once again, I'm going to put all your information, miningwithbrad.com, your X, your LinkedIn, put it all in the show notes. Invite everyone every Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern. You can come join us. You won't get this level of alpha, at least all of these tips. We're more looking at the current state of mining and some of the other stuff that's going on. But Brad, thanks for hopping on. If you're watching this on YouTube, please subscribe. Listen to us on a podcast platform. Please subscribe. Make sure you're following us at Compass Mining on X, LinkedIn, and YouTube. And Brad, thank you so much for your time today.
Sure. Just a little teaser. We are putting together a program for people on this stuff that we'll be deploying in Q2 of this year. So if you're trying to figure out how to get into mining, stay tuned. Keep coming back.